Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Jameson Dead.
All right, welcome back everybody. We're rip-roaring and ready to go with another episode.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. And this one, this one's kind of famous. Kind of.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's kind of famous. If you're in the true crime circle, you probably know it, but maybe you don't. So I'm going to play it like you don't know it, and we'll see what happens.
All right, let's go for it.
So if at any point you're like, hey, that sounds familiar, just let me know.
All right.
Okay, so here's your teaser. It's a very short teaser. So Michael was at home, outside relaxing by his pool. It was a nice evening, and all seemed well in the world. When he returned inside, he found his wife laying at the foot of a staircase, and there was a lot of blood. He called 911.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so too. Later, however, the police start considering Michael as a suspect in her death, and family members originally supported him, but they soon began questioning his innocence as well. And for some of them, that was because of one specific reason. They learned that Michael, drumroll please, was bisexual.
Oh, God.
That's the reason.
That'll definitely lead to some questions and things he may not be able to answer.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is, being bisexual doesn't make you a murderer. Being bisexual doesn't even mean you were unfaithful to your wife. Just saying. But that's why some of them turned on him. So, this is the very crazy case of Michael Peterson and his wife Kathleen's very suspicious death. All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
I'm curious if you're going to kind of recognize this. So
I might. If not, I always love being along for the ride.
Well, I can tell you I've already said the word that would have been the biggest clue to the whole thing.
All right, then if I haven't picked up on it, then I may not.
Okay. There was a documentary about this, and I think a TV show about this, and they both use the same word. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. Michael Ivor Peterson was born near Nashville, Tennessee, the son of Eugene Peterson and Eleanor Peterson. He graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's degree in political science. While there, Peterson was the president of the Sigma Nu fraternity and was editor of the Chronicle, the student newspaper, from 1964 to 1965. He attended classes at the law school of the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. After graduating, Peterson took a civilian job with the United States Department of Defense, where he was assigned to research arguments supporting increased military involvement in Vietnam. That year, he also married Patricia Sue, who taught at an elementary school on the Rhein-Main Air Base in West Germany. The two of them would have 2 children together, Clayton and Todd. In 1968, Peterson was commissioned in the U.S. Marine Corps and served in Vietnam. In 1971, he received an honorable discharge with the rank of captain after a car accident left him with a permanent disability. Years later, during the 1999 Durham Memorial Election, Peterson claimed that he was awarded a Silver Star, a Bronze Star with Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts. He had all the medals, but said that he did not have the documentation for them. Peterson claimed that he received 1 Purple Heart after being hit by shrapnel when another soldier stepped on a landmine, and the other was when he was shot. He later admitted his war injury was not the result of shrapnel in Vietnam, but was the result of a car accident in Japan, where he was stationed after the war as a military police officer. So he kind of got caught in a lie there. A weird
Yeah,
lie.
those are two drastically different things.
Yeah, a very weird lie. Like, why?
Most definitely.
Trying to make yourself cooler, I guess? So the News and Observer said records did not contain any mention of 2 Purple Hearts that Peterson claimed to have received. Peterson and his first wife lived in Germany for some time, and there they befriended Elizabeth and George Ratcliffe and their 2 children, Margaret and Martha. After George's death, the Peterson and Ratcliffe families became very close. When Elizabeth Ratcliffe died in 1985, Michael became the guardian of her 2 children. After Michael and Patricia divorced in 1987, Clayton and Todd lived with Patricia, while Margaret and Martha stayed with Michael, who then moved to Durham, North Carolina. Clayton and Todd later also joined their father. So you have a lot of kids in this house. In 1989, Michael moved in with Kathleen Atwater, a successful Nortel business executive. They married in 1997, and Kathleen's daughter Caitlin became the 5th sibling in this blended family. Peterson wrote 3 novels based around his experience in the Vietnamese conflict: The Immortal Dragon, A Time of War, and A Bitter Peace. He also co-wrote the biographical Charlie Two Shoes and the Marines of Love Company with journalist David Perlmutt, and co-wrote Operation Broken Reed with author L. Boyd. Peterson also worked as a newspaper columnist for the Herald Sun, where his columns became known for their criticism of police and of the Durham County District Attorney James Hardin Jr., who, spoiler, would later prosecute Peterson for the death of his wife, Kathleen. I know, right?
Wow.
You piss off the authorities and then, you're on trial for something.
I was going to say that article must not have gotten good steam there.
It's like making a murderer before there was making a murderer.
Yeah, true. Yep.
On December 9th, 2001, Peterson called emergency services to report that he had found his wife Kathleen unconscious in their Forest Hills neighborhood home of Durham, North Carolina, and suspected that she had fallen down 15 to 20 stairs. His exact words were 15 or 20, I don't know.
Oh my God.
He later claimed that he had been outside the house by the pool and had come in around 2:40 a.m. to find Kathleen at the foot of the stairs. Peterson said she must have fallen down the stairs after consuming alcohol and Valium. Toxicology results showed that Kathleen's blood alcohol content was 0.07, and the alcohol in her urine was a 0.11, and she had taken between 5 and 15 milligrams of Valium. So, yeah, okay. I mean, hopefully she took it on her own accord.
Yeah, exactly. What the hell?
The autopsy report concluded that the 48-year-old woman sustained a matrix of severe injuries, including a fracture of the superior cornu, of the left thyroid cartilage, and 7 lacerations on the top and back of her head, consistent with blows from a blunt object, and had died from blood loss 90 minutes to 2 hours after sustaining her injuries.
Holy hell.
So, if you're outside, how long? I mean, granted, I'm not saying that you're not capable of staying outside at your pool for 2 hours. I mean, obviously people do it. It's a little weird that you're out there from like midnight to 2 a.m., but yeah. So, it's just plausible that he didn't know she fell down the stairs and she bled out for that long. It's plausible.
But very, very suspicious.
Very suspicious. So Kathleen's daughter Caitlin and Kathleen's sister Candace both initially proclaimed Michael's innocence and publicly supported him alongside his children. But Candace reconsidered after learning of Michael's bisexuality, as did Caitlin after she read her mother's autopsy report. Both of them subsequently broke off from the rest of the family. Although forensic expert Henry Lee, hired by Peterson's defense, testified that the blood splatter evidence was consistent with an accidental fall down the stairs, police investigators conclude that the injuries were inconsistent with such an accident. As Peterson was the only person at the residence at the time of her death, he was the prime suspect and was soon charged with her murder. He pled not guilty, which makes sense.
Of course, yeah.
The medical examiner, Deborah Radish, concluded that Kathleen had died from lacerations of the scalp caused by a homicidal assault. According to Radish, the total of 7 lacerations on the top and back of her head were the results of repeated blows with a light yet rigid weapon. The defense disputed this theory. According to their analysis, the lacerations were not consistent with blows of any sort because there was a lack of underlying injury, such as a skull fracture or bruising, swelling, or hemorrhaging of the brain. According to them, there was nothing to indicate actual trauma. The trial drew increasing media attention as details of Peterson's private life began to emerge. Hardin and his prosecution team, among them a man by the name of Mike Nafong, attacked Peterson's credibility, focusing on his alleged misreporting of his military service and what they described as a gay life he led and kept secret. The prosecution contended that Peterson's marriage was far from happy, suggesting that Kathleen had discovered Michael's alleged secret gay life and wanted to end their marriage. It's amazing how someone can take one little nugget and run with it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's insane.
And it makes sense that this is happening in the South. It was the main motive that the prosecution offered at trial for Kathleen's alleged murder, other than a $1.5 million life insurance policy.
Okay, well, that's some good motivation.
Yeah. According to Assistant District Attorney Frida Black, Kathleen would have been infuriated by learning that her husband, who she truly loved, was bisexual and having an extramarital relationship, not with another woman, but a man, which would have been humiliating and embarrassing to her. So this district attorney said that they believed that once she learned this information, an argument ensued and a homicide occurred. The defense argued that Kathleen accepted Michael's bisexuality and that their marriage was very happy, a position supported by Michael and Kathleen's children and other friends and associates. The prosecution said Kathleen's murder was most likely committed with a custom-made fireplace poker called a blow poke, which is such a stupid name. Don't people think this
death
shit
by blow poke?
Yeah, don't people think this shit through?
No.
Apparently that blow poke had been a gift to the Petersons from Kathleen's sister, but that was missing from the house at the time of the investigation. Later in the trial, the defense team produced the missing blow poke, which they said had been overlooked in the garage by police. A juror contacted after the trial noted that the jury had dismissed the idea of the blow poke as a murder weapon. So like you and I, they don't take that thing very seriously. Now we got to discuss something about Elizabeth Radcliffe, who was the friend that they lived with in Germany, who he had kind of took her 2 children in.
Yeah.
Elizabeth was a friend of theirs, and she died in Germany in 1985.
Right.
She had also been found dead at the foot of a staircase with injuries to her head.
Oh, shit. No.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Her death had been investigated by both the German police and the U.S. military police. An autopsy at the time of her death concluded that Radcliffe died from an intracerebral hemorrhage secondary to the blood coagulation disorder von Willebrand's disease, based on blood in her cerebrospinal fluid, and reports that she had been suffering severe, persistent headaches in the weeks leading to her death. The coroner determined that the hemorrhage resulted in an immediate death, followed by her falling down the stairs after she collapsed. So basically, she had an aneurysm.
Okay.
That's what they found.
About that.
Yeah, right? So the Petersons had dinner with Radcliffe and her daughters, and Michael Peterson, had stayed to help Radcliffe put the children to bed before going home. The children's nanny, Barbara, discovered the body when she arrived the next morning. So Michael Peterson was the last person to have seen her alive. Before Peterson's trial, the Durham court ordered the exhumation of Radcliffe's embalmed body that was buried in Texas for a second autopsy in April of 2003.
Well, that's just scarring.
But at the same time, they need to find out how she really died.
True.
So arrangements were made for the Durham medical examiner, who had initially performed Kathleen's autopsy, to perform this reevaluation over the objection of the defense counsel, who argued that the autopsy should be performed by Texas medical examiners.
Oh, so they want a third party.
Yeah, they want someone in Texas who's not part of the actual investigation.
Okay, all right.
Unfortunately, they didn't win, and the body was transported from Texas to Durham. The Durham medical examiner found sufficient evidence drawn from the results of the second autopsy, along with new witness statements describing the scene. Basically, he decided to overturn the earlier findings, and he listed Radcliffe's cause of death as homicide, which it may or may not have been.
Okay.
Yeah. So the prosecution declined to accuse Peterson of Radcliffe's death, but introduced the death into the trial as an incident, giving Peterson the idea of how to fake Kathleen's accident. Despite police reports that there was very little blood at the scene of Radcliffe's death, the nanny, who was the first to discover Radcliffe's body in 1985, took the stand at Peterson's trial and testified that there was a large amount of blood at the scene. Another witness testified to spending much of that day cleaning the bloodstains off the wall. So doubt as to the admissibility of Radcliffe's evidence in court was one of the grounds for a subsequent appeal against his conviction, and that was lodged by his lawyers in 2005, which, spoiler alert, he's going to be found guilty.
Yeah.
In October 2002, acting as administrator of Kathleen's estate, Caitlin filed a wrongful death claim against Michael Peterson. In June of 2006, he voluntarily filed for bankruptcy. 2 weeks later, Caitlin filed an objection to the bankruptcy. So these guys are playing like court chess here.
It sounds like it.
In February of 2007, Caitlin and Peterson settled the wrongful death claim for $25 million. Pending the acceptance by the courts involved. Finalization of the settlement by the court was announced on February 1st, 2008. On October 10th, 2003, after one of the longest trials in North Carolina history, a Durham County jury found Michael Peterson guilty of the murder of Kathleen, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Denial of parole in that state requires premeditation. So despite so despite the jury accepting the murder as a spur of the moment crime, they also found it premeditated. As one juror explained it, premeditated meant not only planning hours or days ahead, but could also mean planning it in the seconds before committing a spur of the moment crime. Which, sure, okay. If you push someone down a flight of stairs, you probably didn't give it much thought.
No.
That's my take on that, but whatever. I wasn't there. Peterson was housed at the Nash Correctional Institution near Rocky Mount until he was released in December of 2011. So note, he's going to get released. Peterson's appeal was filed by his defense counsel with Thomas Mayer, was now serving as his court-appointed attorney, and was argued before the North Carolina Court of Appeals on April 18, 2006. On September 19th, the Court of Appeals rejected his arguments, saying because he said he didn't get a fair trial. They rejected that. The appeals ruling said the evidence was fairly admitted. The judges did find defects in a search warrant, but said that they had no ill effect on the defense.
Okay. All right.
Because the ruling was not unanimous, under North Carolina law, Peterson had the right to appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court, which accepted the case. An oral argument was heard on September 10th, 2007. On November 9th, the court announced that it affirmed the decisions of the appeals. So, absent a reconsideration of the ruling or the raising of a federal issue, Michael Peterson had exhausted his appeals on the verdict. So, as of right now, he's fucked. He has nowhere else to go.
Well, there's always that one defense that everybody uses.
It's way too late for the insanity defense. However, we're not done yet. On
Of
November,
course not. Why would we be?
right. On November 12th, 2008, attorneys J. Burkhart Beal and Jason Anthony of Richmond, Virginia, who were now representing Michael Peterson, filed a motion for a new trial in Durham County on 3 grounds. 1, that the prosecution withheld exculpatory evidence about the blowpoke. 2, that the prosecution used an expert witness whose qualifications were disputed. And 3, that one of the jurors based his judgment on racial factors.
That'll do it every time.
Keep in mind, Michael Peterson is white. So on March 10, 2009, Peterson's motion was denied by the Durham County Superior Court. Now, in late 2003, a new theory on Kathleen's death was raised. This is bizarre, but it might be true. This new theory basically stated that she had been attacked by a barred owl outside.
What?
Yeah. And then she had then fallen down the stairs after rushing inside and had been knocked unconscious after hitting her head on the first tread of the stairs.
Oh my God, that is the biggest load of shit.
Well, hear it out a little bit. This owl theory was raised by Durham attorney T. Lawrence Pollard, a neighbor of the Petersons who was not involved with the case but had been following the public details. He approached police suggesting an owl may have been responsible after he saw autopsy photos of Kathleen's head wounds. Later, when reading the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation's evidence list, he found a feather listed as found in Kathleen's hair, despite having previously been informed by the DA's office that no feathers had been found during their investigation. So the State Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab report listed a microscopic feather and a wooden sliver from a tree limb entangled in a clump of Kathleen's hair that had been pulled out by the roots and found clutched in Kathleen's left hand. A re-examination of the hair in September of 2008 had found another microscopic feather. According to Pollard, had a jury been presented with this evidence, it could have materially affected their deliberation and therefore would have materially affected the ultimate verdict. As crazy as it sounds,
What?
the fact that they're finding feathers suggests something. It's a fucking weird one.
Yeah, that's a reach in my book.
So prosecutors have ridiculed this claim. And Deborah
Good.
Radish, yeah, as you're doing right now, exactly. And Deborah Radish, who conducted the autopsy, says it's unlikely that an owl or any other bird could have made the wounds as deep as those that were in her scalp. However, Radish's opinion was challenged by other experts in 3 separate affidavits filed in 2010. So despite interest in this theory among some outside advocates, no motion for a new trial was filed on this point at that time.
Okay, good, because that would have upset me so much if they went and did a whole new thing just because of the freaking feathers.
It would have. That's why I did it the way I did it. Included it right there with you knowing he was gonna get out.
Ah!
Was that your owl impersonation?
Yeah.
Oh man. So in August of 2010, following a series of newspaper articles critical of the state's Bureau of Investigation, North Carolina Attorney General Roy Cooper led an investigation which resulted in the suspension of one of their agents and analysts, Dwayne Deaver, one of the principal witnesses against Michael Peterson, after they found that his work was some of the worst among all the scores in terms of flawed criminal cases. So basically, Deaver doesn't really do his job, and he bullshits his way through it. So Pollard...
Alrighty then.
Yeah. Pollard subsequently filed affidavits to support a motion that the Superior Court Judge Orlando Houston order the state medical examiner's office to turn over all documentation related to Kathleen's autopsy to Michael Peterson's attorneys. However, Judge Hudson barred Pollard from filing further motions on behalf of Peterson because he didn't represent him. He wasn't his lawyer. He was his neighbor.
Oh, Jesus.
A new motion was filed in October of 2010 by David Rudolph, one of Peterson's original attorneys, who acted pro bono in proceedings challenging the SBI testimony. Deaver was fired from the SBI in January of 2011 after an independent audit of the agency found he had falsely represented evidence in 34 cases.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So including withholding negative results in the case of Greg Taylor, a North Carolina man who had spent 17 years in prison on a murder conviction based on Deaver's testimony.
That's just shitty.
This is why cops shouldn't immediately trust other cops.
Yeah, no kidding.
A blood stain analysis team that Deaver had trained was suspended and disbanded. Basically, anyone he trained, they were like, nope, you're done. We can't trust what you've been taught. In the 2003 Peterson trial, Deaver testified that he had been mentored by SBI bloodstain specialist David Spittle and that he worked on 500 bloodstain cases, written 200 reports, and testified in 60 cases. During a retrial hearing, SBI Assistant Director Eric Hooks testified that Deaver had only written 47 reports, not 200.
Talk about embellishment.
Yeah, I mean, he reminds me of way too many people. Spittle testified that he could not recall mentoring Deaver, who, since completing a 2-day training course in the 1980s, had testified in only 4 cases, the Peterson case being the third of those.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the SBI cited the bloodstain analysis given in the 4th case as the reason that they fired Deaver. So he didn't get to pull his shit with the actual state very long, but it was long enough to have completely fucked Michael Peterson's case.
I guess so. God damn.
So on December 16th, 2011, Peterson was released from the Durham County Jail on a $300,000 bail and placed under house arrest with a tracking anklet. His release on bond followed a judicial order for a new trial after Judge Hudson found that Deaver had given materially misleading and deliberately false testimony about bloodstain evidence and had exaggerated his training, experience, and expertise. So this fucking guy bullshitting the whole thing just fucked this whole case. Imagine how much money was spent on this.
That's it. Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine.
Former North Carolina Attorney General Rufus L. Edmonston said that any evidence gathered after Deaver arrived at the scene might be deemed inadmissible in a new trial. So in July of 2014, Peterson's bond restrictions were erased. In October of 2014, the court appointed Michael Klintkesim to represent Peterson, replacing David Rudolph, who had been working pro bono on the case since his conviction was overturned. Rudolph stated that he could no longer afford to represent Peterson without being paid. On November 14, 2016, Peterson's request for a second trial to be dismissed was refused, and a new trial was scheduled to begin in May of 2017. However, a news report on February 7th of 2017 indicated that a resolution was being negotiated by Rudolph, once again representing Peterson, and the Durham County District Attorney's Office. On February 24th, 2017, Peterson entered an Alford plea to the voluntary manslaughter of Kathleen, asserting his innocence but agreeing that there was enough evidence to likely result in a guilty verdict. Can I just say I hate Alford pleas?
Yes. Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. Like, okay, I'm not going to say I'm guilty, but you can treat me like I'm guilty. What?
Like, yeah, how does that? No.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Nope.
It makes sense if you're still going to serve time in prison. But are you ready for this shit?
No.
So after he pled guilty to this Alford plea, the judge sentenced him to the maximum punishment of 86 months in prison
What?
with credit for time previously
No.
served.
No.
So because Michael Peterson had already served 98 and a half months, he did not face any additional prison time.
Oh my God.
So on March 2nd, 2017, Michael Peterson's attorney filed a motion to allow him to pay for a bird expert at the Smithsonian Institution to examine feather fragments found in Kathleen's hair to determine whether or not she had actually been attacked by an owl.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no further information on the owl theory, at least not that I saw because I didn't dig too deep, but that's just fucking funny. In 2023, Pollard, the neighbor/attorney, endorsed the theory presented in the book Death by Talons, which runs that the bird attack was not restricted to the outside path, but continued inside the Peterson home. So basically she was attacked by this bird, and it continued to attack her as she ran back into the house, and therefore she fell down the stairs.
Oh my God, my brain hurts.
You didn't recognize any of that?
His name sounded familiar.
Yeah, he's a famous writer.
That's about it.
There's a Netflix documentary called The Staircase, and there's a series, I think, on HBO or Hulu called The Staircase with actual actors, and it's played out. Yeah. So I thought you'd get it right away.
I have not seen that. No, I did not.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's like a 10-episode documentary, and it actually covers like the documentary was started before he was found guilty, and then picks up again when he's released.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's crazy because you can see how much he's aged in that time, having spent time in prison and stuff. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the case of Michael Peterson, a.k.a. The Staircase. So, yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining us once again. We'll see you soon. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Jameson Dead.
And we'll see you next week.